Thing vibrates. Listen to every sound.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Now Sound 2.0. Who's excited? Oh my gosh, my mind was blown just preparing this, and I'm looking forward to blowing your minds. So that was Symphony of Science, fantastic clip there. Now, this Now Sound is about the journey of vibration, and when you all hopped out of bed this morning, the moment you moved, you caused waves in ways you would not believe. And when you're driving here, you're causing waves. Sometimes you have an accident that causes bigger waves. So there's negative and positive waves. So we're going to have a little look at that. Sound is a journey of vibration. And this poster that you see here basically sums up the journey of Now Sound. So session 1 is a journey of sound. And we look at vibration from the lowest vibration all the way up to the highest vibrations that we know. Session 2 is about light, and we then bounce back to sound towards the end, and they sort of interweave with each other. Right, so what is vibration? Vibration is a mechanical phenomenon whereby oscillations occur about an equilibrium point. So that is something to ponder. And vibration occurs down to the lowest fundamental levels of what we can even imagine. So this is the official Now Sound 2.0 poster, and I thought we really need to create something that encompasses everything that we're talking about, and that's something people can take. Hard copies of this poster are available as of Monday for order, and the price will be posted on the Telegram channel. All right, let's get into sound. So there is an overview of the poster, and we're going to pull that apart like you wouldn't believe. Isn't that a beautiful picture? You are hearing the sounds of simulated sounds going into the womb of when you are a baby and you're in the waters of your mother. This was produced from a water bag with membrane around it and thick insulation to simulate what happens with sound penetrating into the womb. So our gestation is immersed in sound and vibration, and basically the first thing the baby will hear is the heartbeat of the mother, and the first organ that is produced in our body is the heart. It's pulsing by only week 6. And we don't think about our organs that they function, but they also create energy, and the heart creates an electromagnetic field, which we will be looking at in quite detail in session 2. And that field is very, very powerful. So let's do a deep dive of what happens in the womb. Up the top here we have a picture of the auditory periphery. Deep inside we have the outer ear, middle ear and the inner ear, and on the very right there you can see that is the complete auditory periphery, and that outer ear we call the pinna. But these are the stages in alignment with the weeks. So from week 8 to 9 the inner ears, brain, nose and eyes start to shape, and then from week 16 to 22 internal faint sounds, heartbeat, breathing, digestion start to occur. By week 23, baby can start to hear faint sounds from outside the womb. And they hear lower frequencies better than high, because as sound passes through the membranes of the skin, the muscle, and then penetrate through the water, it's more of a rumbling low frequency. So dads, guess who they hear more? They hear the mums just as well. But these low rumbling noises are more prominent, because the high frequencies, when they pass through dense structures, all those high frequencies are cut off and we have the low rumblings. Now by week 26, baby will be startled quite easily. And I've got 4 little pumpkins, and not so small anymore, getting a bit older and bigger. I remember them jumping, if there was a the dog barked or something loud, that you'd see the tummy move, and they're hearing the vibration transfer going through that medium of air and then through the solid and then into the waters. There's 3 mediums right there. So it's a fascinating process, and we don't appreciate that babies at week 30 on are at the best hearing of our life. From week 30 in the womb, their hearing is amazing. So when they're born, what do? Shh, baby's leaving. No, just carry on life as you did before. Vacuum, when the babies sleep, they love white noise, but it's the sudden noises that will startle babies. So there you go. Isn't that a beautiful journey of babies? I love babies, but no more. Righto. So that basically lays the foundations, and now we're going to move into our first segment. All right, so the roots of sound and light stem from the atomic and molecular level. So as I'm speaking to you, you're thinking, well, I can hear Shannon, but what's actually happening? It's a mechanical power of interrupting this air that is in this atmosphere. I'm interrupting this molecule, then it taps the next one, just like dominoes, and it hits your ears, that vibration transfer. So let's look a bit deeper. This is the Planck length scale. Talk about small. This is really small. So this is it's not the smallest, but it's one of the smallest oscillational vibrational energy that can exist in the quantum scale. And then as we read down there, we're starting from a meter, right? Here's a meter. And then 1 millimeter, teeny little thing. And that little cochlea in your ear, that's, 15 to 20 millimeters. It's not very big. And then as we work down, we're going to the 100s, down to the yoctometer. Who's heard of the yoctometer before? All right, this is 10 to the power of 33 of a meter. Right, this is some big numbers, guys. So that means 100 decillion Planck lengths fit into this big. 100 decillion. Right, and the kids are like, what's a decillion? Well, that's 100 million, billion. Chop that up. It's pretty small, isn't it? All right, we're going smaller. We're going 1 billion times smaller than the Planck length today. The smallest vibrational foundations we know of our current understanding is the quark. It looks like quark, but it's pronounced quark in physics. So anyway, I'm in a study group which we'll talk about a bit later, and there are just new discoveries coming through all the time. And the study group is led by the amazing Robert Edward Grant, and Jimmy Blanchett is one of the contributors. And they're just bombshells, literally dropping daily. Novel discovery this, and I'm having to adjust, now sound, because the discoveries are just increasing at a speed. Knowledge is being poured out phenomenally. We're really getting a deep understanding of vibration and sound. But going back to the Planck length, Jimmy's discovery, credit to Jimmy Blanchett there, the Planck length has a 99.9% harmonic relationship with the Planck length to the kilometre, nautical mile, the statute mile, and the Royal Egyptian cubit. That is amazing. So well done, Jimmy. Good discovery there. Now let's just go back to this vibrational sound. So does sound happen in the water? Yes, it does. It moves a lot faster in water. Here we're in the medium of air, and then sound will also travel through a solid. So for those who live in apartment buildings and you hear people walking on top, that's a sound that is very hard to stop because that's a vibration transfer. And the density of the molecules are just packed so tight in a solid. So the sound, it just hammers through really fast. So let's look at this visualization here. Imagine sound is in the solid, liquid, or the gas. Look how much faster the solid is. Much faster. Let's look at that again. On your marks. So the clear winner is solid, liquid, and gas. So we're looking at this. This is if you picture those dominoes as molecules, one molecule knocks on the next molecule, and then the next, and then the next. So sound is like an illusion. It's actually, sound is not sound. It's just a word we use to describe a mechanical action. I knock this molecule, that knocks that, and it happens at the speed of sound, which is like firing a gun 1,250 kilometers an hour. All right, so what does sound look like? Well, thanks to the technology, this is called Schlieren flow visualization. This is a video filtering technique, and we're actually seeing the sound waves come off the source. Check this out.
Sound, well, that's just another change in air density, a traveling compression wave. So Schlieren visualization, along with a high-speed camera, can be used to see it as well. Here's a book landing on a table. The end of a towel being snapped. A firecracker. An AK-47.
Boom!
And of course, a clap.
Look at those sound waves. So plenty of claps today. You're all making waves next to each other, all doing little molecular interruptions to each other. All right, so the next video is about the Young's double slit experiment. So Thomas Young, a British polymath, did an experiment where he definitively proved that light is a wave and not a particle. This is a bombshell to the physics industry, because our whole model of everything sort of changes. And we kind of forget that light is a wave. But anyway, he proved that with this experiment. And here's a great video showing how this works.
I have here is an empty box. And this is a little eyepiece where we can look in, and this is a hole. And I'm gonna place this slide above that hole. And if you look closely, you'll see that there's two openings. Very narrow openings side by side. It's a double slit. Now before we have a look, we need to tilt it towards the sun a little bit. So we want the sun to hit this double slit directly. What are we going to see on the bottom of the box?
The obvious thing you think you're going to see is you're going to see two lines.
Two lines on the bottom of the box. Two bright bands.
Have a look. You expected to see kind of one line. Is that what you see?
No.
I see dots.
How many?
It's one circle.
Well, there's one in the middle strongest, two either side.
The two on the outside are multicolored, and the one in the middle.
Yeah, I can see tons of dots now. Not tons, but I can see dots spreading across that way.
Either side.
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's just nothing else apart from
Two slits.
two slits.
You saw the ones to the right were slightly colored.
Yeah, it's
that's
starting to go
because
burgundy.
the reds are going to meet up at different places than the blues.
And that's all that makes the colour differences, is different wavelengths.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
So the difference
So,
between red
so
and blue.
that red bin over there and the green part is just, I'm seeing
It's a
that, and it's
different-
just different
different
wavelength. And that's how we bring in all these beautiful colours all around us.
Exactly.
That's amazing. I'm amazed. Oh, good on you. Thanks, Ben.
Hey.
So there you go. It's much better visualizing this in water. Check this out.
If I add a second source of ripples, then we start getting an interesting pattern. This pattern is created by the ripples from the two sources interacting with each other. Where they meet up peaks with peaks and troughs with troughs, the amplitude of the wave is increased.
Amazing, eh? You've got to try that at home in the bathtub. So here's one of the heroes of Now Sound 2.0, and it is Robert Edward Grant. And he wrote a paper with Talal Ghanem, and they basically showed that numbers have a wave nature, numbers themselves. Because when we look at particles and these really small Planck level and quark level vibrations, what do we use to define them? We use numbers. So numbers really, everything starts with numbers and mathematics, with vibration, sound and everything. But in this paper, they show that when you line numbers up in certain patterns, it produces, they're in a wave pattern, and it backs up the Young's double slit experiment. And then if we look at Louis de Broglie, I probably pronounced it wrong, but particles may also behave like waves inside the atoms, exhibiting wavelengths and frequencies just like sound and light do. And then this smallest vibration of energy that we know, called the quarks or quarks, in string theory, is believed that the quarks are like vibrating strings. So this here sums up energy. Matter is simply vibrating energy. Vibration can be described as frequency. Frequency can be described as numbers, and numbers can be perceived and organised as forms and patterns. So there we go. We've laid a good foundation of sound. Now you will appreciate the mechanical power of sound. And it's enough to kill you. All right. Are we ready for the next segment? Ladies and gentlemen, the power of sound. And we're starting with a car. Everyone's heard the local guy with a doof system in his car, and he's driving down the street and the whole kitchen vibrates, you know. These things are getting so powerful now that you'd probably die inside this car. So here, this set a world record. Craig Butler in New Zealand, they did this experiment, and they measured the sound of this car at 181.1 decibels. Now, we're going to talk about decibels because some of the kids are like, what's a decibel? Well, it's a thing we use to say how loud things are. And 181 is probably enough to kill you if you stay in there long enough. It'll start to turn your organs to mush. So we have a poster which we'll talk about in a minute. And that car, not that car, but another one is on there. Now, for those of you who've seen Now Sound 1, you might remember this scene here. And there's been a lot of questions on how this actually works. But remember, I told you, solids, it's a molecular disturbance. So if you pump the sound up enough and it's in the right resonant frequency of that element, it's going to start to vibrate that element. Then you pump the sound up a bit more, it's going to disturb the molecules even more, and you're going to start to get waves in time with the sound. You can only see that in slow-mo. If you look at a car vibrating like that with your own eyes, you don't see those waves. So you need to slow it down because it's happening many times more seconds than your vision can pick up. So this guy just broke a glass with his voice. Is that possible? It is possible. Let's look at what's happening.
Oh, this is amazing. What felt like the whole goblet vibrating is actually the rim bending back and forth, 337 times a second, the same rate as the sound waves. If I draw in the sound waves, you can see what's happening. One wave comes out of the speaker and pushes the side of the wine glass. The glass bounces back just when another sound wave pushes it again. If the timing or frequency of the sound waves is exactly right, the motion will build until the glass breaks.
Boom. That's one word you hear a lot today is boom. So many boom moments. So what's happening there is you hold the glass, you give it a little tap, and you'll hear the frequency that it resonates at. And then that man before, he just did his voice at that exact same pitch. Do it loud enough, it'll oscillate it and then smash it. All right, so that's how that works. Let's move on to the longest reverberation. So that was a C major arpeggio over 2 octaves with an alto saxophone. Now I must say, why did he choose an alto saxophone? They just love to cut, but it sounds beautiful, doesn't it? And then you can hear it. He just plays it and it keeps going and going. So let's talk about reverberation. So this is the Inchindown oil tanks in Scotland. These were full of oil for oil storage. And that was Trevor Cox playing his alto sax there. That was 112 seconds in reverberation. And reverberation is simply the echo in a room. And every room will reverberate, and we measure these in what we call RT60. And this is reverberation time, the decay time it takes for it to drop 60 decibels. So Simon and I get to work in many environments, and we get called to all different kinds of places. And here's some examples of some of the places we work. And then up top, it'll say RT60 equals, and then the seconds. And you'll realise how extreme 112 seconds is. Getting bigger. And they get more expensive the longer they are. So that is our record. And that was a private facility by a man who's a media mogul, rhymes with pokes. I can't tell you much more about that, but back to Inchinton Downs.
I'm inside one of the Inchindown oil tanks, an old oil storage facility near Inverness in Scotland. This tank is 237 metres long, and it's not meant for humans. When it was in use by the Royal Navy, all this colossal space would have been filled with fuel oil. With these oil tanks, the Royal Navy accidentally created the greatest reverberation chamber in the world. Flat surfaces enclosed by solid rock, and a chamber big enough that sound takes a whole second or more to go off the far wall and bounce back, but still narrow enough that you get lots of reverberation from all the close surfaces as well. Preston here is going to fire a starting pistol, a very, very loud bang. On the screen is a visual display of that sound. Different frequencies will reverberate for different amounts of time, so you will see that and hear that. And as it gets quieter, we will turn up the level on the microphone so it's easier for you to hear. Right, everyone ready?
I cut it short, otherwise we'll be sitting here all day waiting for it to finish. So there you go. That is the world record reverberation time. And I just had to put that in Now Sound because as acoustic and sound engineers, we're dealing with reverberation problems everywhere you go. And the reason why it's important that we treat these places, particularly a theatre like this, when you go to a restaurant, if it's not treated, the reverberation is not correct. What happens is all the consonants in your speech are very long. And as you know, you say the t. Your t is just 10 seconds long. So what happens is your conversations are all over the room. So then when we do these absorptions, we make the consonants short. Your conversations are localized and they're private. So that is the key to treating reverberation. All right, for the kids, we spoke about decibels before. So what is decibels? Decibels is how we measure sound. And then there's a beautiful poster that we made over there. This is the official Now Sound 2.0, the dB SPL chart. dB means decibels, SPL means sound pressure level. because sound is a pressure. It's a mechanical molecular pressure, so we use the word SPL. Now, there are also, the reason this came about is we thought, okay, here's the human hearing range. What is the average? What is the lowest sound that we can possibly hear? And we set that at 0. So that was 0 decibels. That is the quietest sound, the threshold of human hearing. Now, that is on the chart. Now, sound can go much lower than that. And it goes all the way up past the 200s, which we'll look at soon. So that's how we measure decibels. Now, it's in A weighting. There's 3 main weightings so dBA, dBC, dBZ. So A is the closest to human hearing. So everything on that poster is in the A weighting. And then we use C weighting for analysing low frequencies. And then we use Z weighting to analyse environmental noises and sounds. So generally, when we talk decibels, it's in the A weighting. Just for the skeptics. Right, so let's look at some key facts about this poster. So 0 dB is 20 micropascals. So we measure a mechanical force in pascals. 20 micropascals, very, very small. Now, pascals will kill you if they're heavy enough, like a bomb going off. You know, we're talking past the millions of pascals, and they will blow your body apart. So sound can kill you indeed. All right, so let's work up. A baby sleeping is at 10 decibels, roughly. And they're beautiful, quiet, cute breathing noises of a baby. You put your ear there, that's about 10 decibels. And then when you whisper in someone's ear, about 25 decibels. Normal speech, around 40 to 60 decibels. Wim Hof doing his breathing, about 50, even up to 60 decibels, depending how excited he is. And then in a plane cabin can be 70 to 80 decibels. And here's where we start to perceive things are getting a little bit noisy. I was a high school teacher, so I like a quiet working environment. And don't talk while I talk. So we have this sensitivity of the decibel level where sound is at and where it should be at. Now let's look at some animals. Alligator hiss, 105 decibels. Right, my voice speaking to you right now, it's probably sitting in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and if I get really excited, it might go more. So Apple AirPods, 105 decibels. And you might want to look at the patent number on those. They do some interesting things. Now, the loudest animal on planet Earth that we know is 125 decibels, and it's on that poster. Right. Let's go back down right to the bottom. What is the quietest sound possible on planet Earth? This is the quietest sound on planet Earth. Now, guess what? Air is a fluid. Liquid is a fluid too. But air is not a liquid. Does that blow your mind? Air is actually a fluid medium in physics. And what happened is we observed the quietest sound on Earth is called the Brownian motion, named after this guy. Fancy that. Not the brown note. Robert Brown. 1827, the botanist. He crushed up pollen grains he wanted to analyse in water under the microscope, and he noticed the molecules they would move and then suddenly randomly move and bump around, but you couldn't see what was causing them. So this movement is what we call the Brownian motion of molecules moving. And in the air, the Brownian motion is negative 23 decibels. So everyone go like this. Don't hit the person next to you. Did you feel that air? You just made the quietest sound in the world. That is Brownian motion. Now you can feel the molecules of the air. We perceive that as wind. Movement of this fluid medium is what we just term it wind, but it's actually the molecules moving, putting them into motion. All right, so let's look at this Brownian motion. And you'll see they're just randomly moving by themselves, but they're actually bumping into water molecules which we can't see with our eye. And then the same happens in the air. We can't see the air, but the same thing happens. So there's Brownian motion. And then just in the last 2 weeks in our study group, someone, boom, drops a new paper. There is potentially a sound quieter than Brownian motion. It won't hit the scientific papers for a while of perhaps sound, but it is called atomic breath. And scientists have measured the disturbance of atoms rubbing against each other, and they're calling this atomic breath. So we might see some new figures. Maybe, we'll see. So where can we go for a holiday to the quietest place in the earth? We know the quietest sound, but what about an environment where it's quiet? It's pretty quiet now, isn't it? You know, those awkward silent moments? Well, I'm going to show you a place that is so quiet that you're embarrassed by your tummy noises, and your digestion and just swallowing is so loud it's embarrassing. I haven't been in this quiet, but...
This is the anechoic chamber. One thing to notice are these wedges. These are sound-absorbing material. They are anechoic, that means no echoes. All the sounds are absorbed. This chamber gives us the opportunity to look for those really small signals that can have a big impact to the end user. This is what it is. It's the best tool available. I think within Microsoft, it's a tool that we can use across the company.
So there you go. That's pretty quiet there. Negative 20.6. It's not far up from the Brownian motion. There was a record in Orfield Laboratories. Negative 9.4 was the previous record holder. So these guys smashed it. You know, very impressive. So who's ready to get loud? Who's excited? All right. Now, my mum's here tonight, so we can't go too loud. Here is one of the loudest factories in the world, presented by Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear. This is a NASA facility where they test the RS-25 rockets. Now, let's just talk about the loudest sound you can experience here in Perth is in Motorplex with these top fuel races, 160 decibels. Right, but that's when they're on full noise, when their foot goes all the way to the floor, and it only lasts 5 seconds. No, 3 seconds. 3 seconds at 160 to 170 decibels. Now just imagine that noise constantly going for about 20 minutes.
Because the noise they were planning on making would wake the dead.
Boom!
Don't worry if you can't hear what I'm saying. I couldn't even hear myself. This is the loudest sound you could possibly conceive. And, as it turns out, the cleanest. Now, the most amazing thing is that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing. It will actually rain. I told you! It's raining! That's unbelievable! Oh, NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather.
Some thought there about artificial weather. They can't make artificial weather. I think I just proved it wrong. All right, so we're in NASA still. What is the loudest studio in the world? We've heard the quietest or seen the quietest. What is the loudest? Well, here's a guitar solo in the loudest studio in the world. 163 decibels, you know, that's seriously loud. And wouldn't you love to build a studio like that? You know, my wife hears the words, I need to build a new studio. She starts getting a nervous twitch. All right, it gets a lot louder, guys. A lot louder. All right, let's look at these babies. Now, they're all on the poster. That's the best thing. So this is the Seawolf class submarine radar system. The BQQ 5D active sonar system. Now, there's your little dinghy or your cabin cruiser uses passive sonar. These guys use active. So we need to fire a lot of power into it. And my gosh, a lot of power. All right. So on the left is a submarine sonar, and obviously the shell of the submarine's been stripped back. They're doing work on that. And then on the right is pretty much the loudest ship-based sonar, which is the AN-SQQ-89A active combat sonar system. Now, to learn more about that, we must hear from Mr. Slav.
So how does a sonar work? How is it able to create such incredibly powerful sound? A sonar is typically made out of the transducers. When we apply electricity to transducers, they convert it into mechanical motion or sound. They can also receive sound and convert it into the voltage. So not only these things can create sound, but also pick up sound and display information on the sonar screen. Basically like a microphone, which also can make a sound. One of the most powerful sonars is SQS-26TX. The sonar is at its limits, since giving it more power would start boiling surrounding water and create bubbles. Yup, intense sound can boil water 1 meter from the hull. And crew of submarines would be having a hard time reading surroundings when there is a sea sub boiling nearby. But if the submarine goes deeper, it takes more power to boil. So submarine sonars could use more power. And by saying more power, I'm saying up to 700,000 watt.
I thought my stereo was powerful. 700,000 watt. All right, they're actually cracking 750,000 now. And the figures are classified, so I cannot tell you. I know it. Now, Simon and I had the pleasure of doing some work with the local guys, and we saw some fantastic things at the submarine base there. What is the loudest possible sound? Here it is. You're seeing the loudest sound produced in a lab, 270 decibels, just a teeny bit over 270. This is the theoretical limit of sound in water, and it was produced at the Rutgers University, New Jersey, team led by Claudiu Stan. So after blasting tiny jets of water with the X-ray laser, researchers watched left and right moving trains of shockwaves travel away from the micro bubble filled regions, 14 to 30 micrometers in diameter. Now, that audio you heard wasn't actually it. I just put it in there because it sounded cool. However, it was CERN. How good is that? Now, it wasn't the loudest noise, but it just looked cool and sounded cool, so it's in there. So there you go, guys. That wraps up our segment on the power of sound. I hope you enjoyed it. Right, who's ready to look at the speed of sound? And we have some new areas to look at. Isn't that just the most fantastic image right there? You're looking at a visual representation of what sound is starting to do. Let's look at this video and then we'll look at it again. Boom! there's more. And that is a big explosion. Atomic bomb. However, the audio is not real. It's fake. Because if we look at the speed of sound, notice when you saw the boom, you heard it at the same time, didn't you? Now the speed of sound, the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers a second. So it's like when you see the lightning strike, you don't hear the thunder straight away, do you? Unless it's right at your doorstep. It takes time. So that was number one. The second part is all the sound of that water was quite a way away. By the time that gets to you, it'll be all low frequency. You won't hear that shiny, shimmering drops of water hitting each other. Then thirdly, you saw the shockwave go, all right, and we're going to look at shockwaves coming up. It literally stops. There's a video overlay. Rather, the birds would not be hanging around when the millions of pascals hit them. And then there's obviously a fake camera shake. All right, so watch it again. Instant sound. The shockwave haven't even arrived yet and he shakes the camera. Oh, the birds are still there. And there's the high frequency of the water, which you would not hear from that distance away. So the further away, the low frequencies are the one that penetrate and the high ones drop off first. So let me introduce the Speed of Sound poster, exclusive to Now Sound 2.0, available next week for print purchase. Now we actually do have one of each of the posters available for sale. Only one of each today. The others are going in my son's bedroom, I promised. All right, so this is really cool. No one's done something like this. And we're showing the 4 phases, the 4 states of matter. And at the bottom you see solids, then we have liquids, then we have gases, and then plasma. No one talks about how plasma works. However, 99% of our physical universe is plasma. You know, you see those stars out there? Plasma, the sun, plasma. The moon, plasma. Let's not get into that. All right, so here's some key facts. Water moves at 1,482 meters a second, 5,333 kilometers per hour. So sound in water is much more efficient. But then when we go through these solids, it's way faster. The top speed is beryllium, which is just past diamond at 128,000 kilometers per hour. This is the theoretical limit of sound through a solid. If it goes any more, it starts breaking down the molecules and the sound can't propagate anymore. So there are theoretical limits to how fast a vibration can transfer through a medium. And then plasma is much slower because it's not a very dense medium. And we're looking at in millimeters per second, about 25 to 27 millimeters a second through plasma, as measured in the lab. So have a look in the break at those posters. They are fascinating. So let's visualize the speed of sound. Here is the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, and a great visual because this is basically 1,280 meters long. Here we go. There it goes. And the other side. So that is how fast sound moves. If you're standing in the bridge and you try and shout to your mate on the other end of the bridge, 3.7 seconds, which is basically like a gunshot. That's how long a gun bullet would take to hit the other side of the bridge. So here's a great experiment a high school teacher did with his students, and we have an idea that, you know, when you see someone talk or make a noise, you hear it straight away. So for kids, it's quite an experience when they realise when you go far away and you hear a sound, there's a delay.
That's actually a pretty cool delay.
Keep the button pressed while he's crashing. I want to hear the crash
It's
through
on
the
a radio. And again. So they're on the school oval and they're a bit excited, as you can see. All right, so obviously shockwaves are part of the speed of sound, and we thought let's put that in the speed of sound segment because everyone is captivated by seeing jets and these shows, and you hear they do the sonic boom. If they go a certain speed, you'll get the boom, but how does that boom work? So what you're looking at here is pre-Mach 1. Mach 1 is the speed of sound, 1234 roughly kilometers per hour. This slightly adjusts depending on how hot or cold things are. When something's colder, sound will move faster. When it's hotter, sound will move slower because the molecules are not as tightly packed together. So freezing cold. Same with water. We boil water with these radar systems, so let's go real deep and fire the thing up and kill all the whales. And that's why you have these big beachings with whales, because they've been playing with their sonar. All right, what are shockwaves? Let's have a look.
Watch out for the shock, it's coming.
You're seeing the shockwave. Here it comes. Boom. Boom. Wouldn't want to have been there. That probably killed a few people, unfortunately, because the Pascal measurement is just so great, it literally blows things apart to smithereens. Okay, so let's just step back a bit. We need to get a grip of Mach numbers, which we classify as speeds of sound with jets. So subsonic is sonic meaning sound. It is under, so it's under the speed of sound, under 980 kilometers per hour or less. So we call this Mach 0.8. Now, when you see these jets forming these cones around, this is usually in the transonic cone phase, and this is transitioning slower than the speed of sound, then faster than the speed of sound. You can see the speed there, 980 to 1470. Then we have supersonic, hypersonic, and high hypersonic. These are some serious speeds of objects moving through our air medium, and we're looking at NASA rockets, the Falcon Heavy and things like that, moving at 26,000 kilometers per hour. This is very fast. Mach 10, 10 times the speed of sound. And then you can see supersonic, hypersonic, and high hypersonic. This is where we're getting the booms. If we're under Mach 1, we won't get the booms. Here's a great visual representation, like in the water. So if we have a sound in one point, this is sort of what it looks like. Now pretend this is water. So if we drop a pebble, there, it's right there moving. Now if that pebble starts moving along, this is what we call half the wave speed or half the speed of sound. Imagine little beetles swimming along the water, and they're the little waves. The same thing happens in water. So this is half the speed of sound. Now watch what happens when we go the speed of sound in this medium. See how those waves are compressed, they're squashed up, and they build up. And this is moving at the speed of sound. So all those, they should have been even circles, they are now squashed up together and compressed. And then when we go faster, that's where we start getting the cone behind, right? And then there's hyperbola carpet where we start getting the boom at the back. And then this is a visual representation moving double the speed of sound. And you can see that cone's, a lot further back behind the object. And here's a great little animation.
As it overtakes sound waves it has emitted, while generating new ones from its current position, the waves are forced together, forming a Mach cone. No sound is heard as it approaches an observer, because the object is traveling faster than the sound it produces. Only after the object has passed will the observer hear a sonic boom. Boom! Where the Mach cone meets the ground, it forms a hyperbola, leaving a trail known as the boom carpet as it travels forward. This makes it possible to determine the area affected by a sonic boom. What about figuring out how strong a sonic boom will be? This involves solving the famous Navier-Stokes equations to find the variation of pressure in the air due to the supersonic aircraft flying through it. This results in the pressure signature known as the N wave. What does this shape mean? Well, the sonic boom occurs when there is a sudden change in pressure, and the N wave involves two booms, one for the initial pressure rise at the aircraft's nose, and another for when the tail passes and the pressure suddenly returns to normal. This causes a double boom, but it is usually heard as a single boom by human ears.
Okay, so I found this guy who really explains the N shockwave. So you're hearing two booms. That part, those 2 points of the N. Yeah, this guy. Now, if we recorded my voice reading a sentence like this, and then we combined all these words into one sound, this is what the N-wave shock sound is like. There you go. There's a shockwave, because we just compressed all the sounds of that time and moment into one time space, or slightly stretched because there's 2 points. And then if there's a jet flying past, all the sounds of that jet, the front of the nose going through the wind, the wings, the tail, the sound of the jet engines, and we squash them into one sound, we throw them towards you, boom! And it's moving at the speed of sound from that point, 1230 to 50 kilometers per hour, and it'll hit you. And depending how loud that source is, the boom will be higher or lower, and depending how far away you are from it. So there you go. Here's some alternative shockwaves. A whip. Lightning strike.
In your finger. And it's snaps shut so fast.
Gets his little thumb out. Boom.
It fires a bubble bullet. Up to 62 miles an hour.
And 2-inch, 1-pound steel balls. Kids, you can do that at home, and you'll burn the paper and smell the smoke. Mum will love it. And of course, the 9mm gun. More boom moments. So there you go. That wraps up our segment on the speed of sound. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's move on. All right, so we thought we would put, we did the brown note last year, and I thought, it sort of went down quite well. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. So we thought we would drop the segment Smells and Sounds. And there you go. We thought, why is flatulence funny? I mean, it's just a noise. Now, you heard their Lord Kane album. And you can download this guy's music. Well, it's not sort of music. Well, the definition of music is an arrangement of sound and silence. So it could be put in there, and it's tonal. Anyway, so that the track play there is called Squeaky Surprise. And he's named his album I Fart in Your General Direction. And it has 56 tracks. Top hits such as Short But Sweet, Dual Tone, Turd Time a Charm, and Slippery When Wet. Now, as you know, we're not going to understand why flatulence is funny unless we dive into some science. So let's have a look.
I would like to take this opportunity to explain why farts are funny and queefs are not. Men have always joked about farts, and we in fact name our farts. We have the squeaker, and then there's the foghorn, and the don't be scared, and of course there's the
Excuse me.
Oh, that gets quite inappropriate there because we go into queefs, but we won't go there. All right, so Trevor Cox is an acoustic engineer, and he studied intensely whoopee cushions.
Yeah,
Let's have a
it's
look.
a bit odd to be a scientist who studies whoopee cushions. About 70,000 people listened to various whoopee cushion sounds and rated how funny they were. We also found that children find them more funny, which maybe not that so surprising. Which gives you the intermittent sound you get out of a whoopee cushion. Acoustic waves, after all, are changes in pressure, so you need this intermittent pressure flow to actually give you sound. What drives the vocal folds open is the air coming out the lungs, and what pulls them back together again is the drop in pressure. Is exactly the same that happens in the whoopee cushion. Sound 3. I think in terms of whoopee cushion, I think I've probably reached my peak whoopee cushioness.
So philosopher James Spiegel believes that farting can be humorous because it disturbs divulges from societal norms and reminds people of basic human nature. PhD Joe Hansen has a great take on this.
Everybody farts. You, your mother, kittens, the Dalai Lama, probably regular llamas too. Just about anything in the animal kingdom with a rear end can and does fart. And passing gas can have a lot of different purposes. Herring, they fart to communicate. Coral snakes fart as a defense mechanism. The West Indian manatee uses farting to regulate its buoyancy. And beaded lacewings make death farts, a gas that's specifically evolved to paralyze and ultimately kill termites, who also fart. A lot. Like, termites fart enough to contribute maybe a few % to global greenhouse gas emissions. That's a lot of gas. So farting is natural to do, and it's natural to find it a little gross. Then why are fart noises so funny? We've been letting out fart jokes nonstop since at least the Bronze Age. There are a couple of different thoughts on why we giggle at this bodily function. Laughing is a social behavior that helps us bond with each other. So we may laugh as a way to make the farter feel less embarrassed. Something called incongruity theory says we laugh at unexpected things, which farts usually are. Our brain's response to confusion is often laughter.
And finish that with Lord Kane. One more.
People think that that's lowbrow humor, it's stupid humor. To me, a fart is funny. A fart, let's break down a fart for a second. Okay, it comes out of your ass. It smells like poop, because it's been just hanging out next to it for a long time. And it makes a little trumpet noise.
There you go. So here's a paper if you want to look further by James Spiegel. And it's fascinating because someone had to study it and we had to look at it. So naturally, we'll move on in this segment to the smell. Is smelling hearing? Possibly. Well, actually, our noses are highly sophisticated quantum resonant devices, and we need to look at quantum mechanics to go further. So it can distinguish over 1 trillion smells, this little nose here. And you think that's impressive. Look at dogs. Way more, way more. So this guy, Luca Turin, he studied sulfur compounds at a quantum molecular level, biophysicist, and he found some phenomenal findings. So researcher Arvin Ash explains the process.
At the top of your nasal passages behind your nose, there's a patch of special neurons about the size of a postage stamp called the olfactory epithelium. They have hair-like projections called cilia that increase their surface area. Any molecule from anything with a smell binds to special smell receptors on these cilia and triggers the neuron, causing a signal to your brain. At the ends of these olfactory neurons, and there are about 400 such smell receptors, can only accept particular shapes of molecules. And the exact type of smell is determined by how the molecules from the smelly compounds fit in the set of receptors of the receiving olfactory neuron. So researchers discovered that you can have molecules of different shapes that have the same smell. So for example, cyanide smells the same as benzaldehyde, a bitter almond smell, but they're vastly different shapes. So scientists concluded that there must be something more than just the shapes that determine smell. Well, it turns out that although the shapes are different, cyanide and benzaldehyde have the same vibration. New research suggests that it is indeed not just the shapes of the molecules, but also the vibrations of these molecules that determines how we perceive smell. Luca Turin, a biophysicist at the Alexander Fleming Research Center in Greece, conducted experiments using the smell of sulfur compounds. He identified molecules that have the same vibrational frequency as sulfur, but with completely different molecular shapes than sulfur. What he found was that these compounds with the same vibrational frequency of sulfur do indeed smell like sulfur, even though their molecules are shaped completely differently. It is theorized that the vibrations of certain molecules might allow electrons from certain smell receptors to tunnel through to other smell receptors and trigger signals in the neurons and then subsequently to the brain. Different molecules with different vibrations can cause different rates of tunneling. When the molecule of the odor has a certain frequency that matches the energy of the receptor, quantum tunneling works in such a way that it opens a gateway for an electron to tunnel more preferentially than when the molecule and its vibration is not present. In a way, you might say our noses not only smell shapes, but hear shapes too.
There you go. So there is actually a sensory bandwidth. So if something is so smelly, it's going to take from your other senses. Now, here we are. Danish physicist Tor Nordstranders developed this chart which has the bandwidth. And if we look at all the senses, we have touch, smell, hearing, sight, taste. All right, so this is the sensory bandwidth, and the sight is the largest. And he compared it to megabytes per second. Sight is 1,250 megabytes per second. Touch is the next one down, 123 megabytes per second. 12.5 megabytes a second for hearing and smell. Hearing and smelling, they're the same thing because it uses vibration, doesn't it? And then taste is only a small one at 16 bytes per second. Now, this is why in noisy environments, things will taste bland because they're detracting from already a very fine sense, which taste is. And then you'll see a little dot in that left corner there. That is just our perception of all these senses. Because if we were aware of all these senses at once, it would be like Spider-Man when he discovers his senses, his power, and he can hear everything down 2 blocks away. He can feel things, and that's what would happen. So we only need to be aware of the key things that we need to be aware of, and the brain will switch off those things that it learns are not necessary to focus on, such as being in a room with 50 people and you're listening to one conversation. All right, so that wraps up Smells and Senses, ladies and gentlemen. So sound is very illusory and your brain plays tricks. So let's look at sound, the illusion. The vestibulo-ocular part of our auditory periphery is connected with sight. So when we see things, they play tricks. So let's look at this one first. Now, this involves some participation from you and guys watching on TV. So what you need to do is you choose one of these. You choose green needle or you choose brainstorm. And you don't say it, just think about it. All right, just choose one now, and I'm going to play an audio, and that's the audio you will hear. You can choose any one. You ready? Here we go. Hear what you read? Let's do it again. Choose another one. All right, no matter how you change it, whatever you read, you will hear. Now, there's only a small percentage of people that won't work on. You're very special. Okay.
Take this jumping transmission tower, for example. Around 20% of people will actually hear a thud each time it lands in a phenomenon known as visually evoked auditory response. Do you hear it? It's a type of synesthesia, which is when the senses like hearing and sight get crossed in the brain. Expectation is also playing a role here. A 2006 study scanned the brains of participants who were told they would eventually hear a sound. As they were listening to the silence and expecting to hear something, the auditory cortex was activated in the same way as when you are actually listening to sound. So, do you hear it now? Our brains are pretty good at filling in the gaps, like in this audio clip.
The state governors met with their respective legislatures convening in the capital city.
But now listen to it with the cough removed.
The state governors met with their respective legislatures convening in the capital city.
There's literally a full syllable missing, but with the cough, people tend to hear the entire word.
The state governors met with their respective legislatures convening in the capital city.
This illusion is known as temporal induction. Your brain fills in information to make sense of the world.
Okay, what about phantom word illusion?
And then listen to these words. What do you hear? Maybe no way? Or bueno? Or depending on how you're feeling, Rogaine?
No rain?
Love me?
No rent?
This phantom word illusion is best experienced in front of two speakers. It sounds like each speaker is producing a different word. But why?
All right, that wraps up that segment. Let's look at the sounds of nature. This was a popular segment on Now Sound 1, and this year we look at these beautiful creatures called bees. They are one of my favourite little creatures. And my family name, Debie, means of the bees, literally of these. And they have some fantastic qualities. So the wing frequencies of bees move and they aerate the hive so that the honey doesn't crystallize and go solid. Beekeepers live the longest as a profession. There's on average 10 to 80,000 bees from every hive. And then, you know, sometimes you'll get a swarm of bees on your porch. This is called a traveling hive, and they're only going to be there for a little while, but what do? We spray them and try and get rid of them. What you're supposed to do is get a little plate of honey or just some sugar, and then they'll get their energy, and then they'll move on and set up their nest somewhere else. So they flap their wings at 180 times per second. Now we thought we'd look at bees because they have amazing vibroacoustic properties. So at my home, I measured these Australian carpenter honeybees, and I measured their frequency. Let's have a listen. And I thought, let's get the analyzer out. .450 hertz. That is a B flat note in natural 432 hertz tuning. Bang on. Not 1 cent under or over. It was smack on 450 hertz. Now, other species, they're generally on a B or a B flat. Isn't that funny? At 450 hertz. But when they land on a flower, they change their frequency. And this is pretty special.
Let me show you what the bee has to do using these tuning forks here. When the bee lands on the flower, it changes the rate at which it beats its wings to just the right frequency. From this note to this one.
C.
Middle C. And it's these vibrations that are the key, unlocking the stamens, which open up at the top here and just shower the bee with pollen. Ah, look at that. Look at the amount of yellow pollen on there. Fantastic. Now watch the bee do the same, hitting the middle C note with the beat of his wings and unlocking the pollen.
A major seventh. Isn't that fascinating? Now, you think that's impressive. When they go back to their hive, they communicate with their mates where they found the food, and they do the woggle dance. Who's heard of that? They do the woggle dance, and it tells them exactly where they were, how far away, the angles, and all that. Now, not only that, is they can sense sound in their legs and in their antenna, and they do a different frequency with their wings, which transfers to the hive, and it means, listen up, guys, I've got something to say. And it's 200 to 300 hertz. And let's have a look at this. So the antenna up top there senses frequencies up to 500 hertz. And then in their legs, there's a join, and that senses a bit low, right down to 12 hertz, very low frequencies. Now, they make the sound with their wings, that's on the plant, and then in the hive, they move their body very fast at that 12, not very fast, 12 cycles a second, and that causes the low vibration, which their legs sense that low vibration. And then they talk to their mates like this. Amazing video edit there to show that. And that's what it looks like. Fascinating stuff. So we did see some evidence of genetic memory where you put a bit of honey in a plate and then some fake honey in another one, put a bit of water and then you jiggle it and then you see the hexagonal pattern. So try that at home. However, there can be some water in the solid state has a hexagonal structure as well. So it's not quite conclusive for us to show you, but try it at home. You'll be blown away with what you see. So that concludes the sound of nature, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on to our last segment, sonic entrainment. Now, some of you might have started tapping your foot there. Some people take longer. But the process of listening to music and tapping your foot along is called entrainment, and that's where your brain couples to the sound, the source, and here's all the different forms of entrainment. So we couple to the earth has a resonance, so walking on the beach is coupling with this resonance. And if someone's telling a story and there's a listener, parts of the brain match, and this is called mirror neurons or neural coupling. Here's a great compilation of all the entrainment, and we're going to be finishing up soon with a brilliant track that will entrain you. Beautiful compilation there, animation by Polyfjord and music by Love by Little Red Church. So let's look at these brainwave states. So the 5 brainwave states are delta at the lowest when you're in a deep sleep, theta state when you're more dreaming and not in such a deep sleep, alpha state where you're just in a nice resting state, beta when you're more alert, and then gamma when you're really fired up and you're alert and you can do crazy feats of human thought. So here is a binaural beat, is where we do 2 frequencies and they combine, and then your brain will interpret the frequency. So delta is 4 hertz. Theta, 8 hertz. 1 ear to 1 ear to 1 ear to 1 ear. 8 beats per second, which is where the Schumann resonance is, 7.83 hertz. Alpha state, 14 cycles a second. Beta, 30 cycles a second. Now we're getting really fast. And then gamma, over 30 cycles a second.
The frequency of binaural beats that appears to bring about improved cognitive functioning at the level of memory, improved reaction times, and improved verbal recall seems to be 40 hertz. Now, is it exactly 40 hertz? We don't know. But if one wants to look up a great reference on this, the reference Colzato, Colzato et al., 2017, describes, and here I'm quoting, so this is a direct quote, "The present findings are in line with those of a recent study which also found faster reaction times in participants that listen to binaural beats of 40 hertz. And you can find many examples of this.
So music is sound's highest achievement. And we have outlined for you the complete beats per minute music entrainment tempos. So these are brilliant tools for those who want to choose the right music for the right mood or emotional state that you want to be in. So first we need to look at this psychological perception of rhythm, and it's called metric accenting, and it's how we perceive beat. So here we have a kick, hi-hat, snare, hi-hat, and it sounds like this. So when we hear a pulse, we want to break it up into strong and weak beats. So there's a strong, weak beat. So when we hear just a constant click, our brain will try and break it up, and it helps us lock into entraining with the rhythm. So here's a clock, and it's all the same pitch, but how do you perceive it? Do you hear it just as one sound, or do you hear strong, weak, strong, weak? So musos would generally hear that as strong, weak, like kick, snare, kick, snare. It's called metric accenting, and it's just a psychological effect that naturally happens.
Rhythmic entrainment can be broken down into 5 stages. The first, neuronal entrainment, is when internal neuronal firings are driven by and fire in phase with the external signal. This is known as phase locking, and is the foundation for all other levels of entrainment. The second, perceptual entrainment, involves the formation of our internal representations of rhythm and meter. We form a mental representation, a structure that gives us the ability to expect and anticipate future beats. The third level of entrainment, autonomic, is how our unconscious biological systems like heart rate and respirations synchronize or attempt to synchronize to the rate of the music. For example, when we hear fast-paced music, our heart rate increases. When we hear slower-paced music, our heart rate decreases. The fourth level, motor entrainment, involves conscious physical movement and depends on perceptual entrainment. This is quick. As soon as you perceive a clear beat, you can move along to it. The fifth, social. For musicians, this is how we synchronize with each other in a group or a band. Non-musicians socially entrain to others every single day in the form of conversation.
So this is the complete table of BPMs for each state that you want to be in. So if you're wanting just to relax and chill out, you'll put on a low alpha, 60 to 80 beats per minute. Now you notice we didn't put theta and delta state in that table because when you're trying to go into a deep sleep, the auditory periphery shuts off. And if you stimulate it with tonal music, you won't go into a deep sleep. So if you go to sleep to music, just set it to 40 minutes, whatever, and then turn it off so your auditory periphery can go to sleep. All right, the final video for you guys, I set a challenge for my favourite DJ in the whole world, Paul Lana, who's in the audience today. Give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I set a crazy challenge that no DJ has done before on planet Earth. Not even nearly, because the parameters were so crazy. It was like, can it be done? But he pulled it off. So there must be one track around 3.5 to 4 minutes in length. It must start at 60 beats per minute in low alpha state, and then it must finish all the way in high gamma state at 300 BPM. And Paul's like, whoa, that's territory I've never been in, but we'll have a crack at it. Now, it must also have a smooth transition between the brainwave states. It's got to have some drops in there. It must be in 432 hertz. And it must have a binaural beat sweeping linearly all the way from 8 hertz to 30 hertz to entrain. If you want to try that at home, share it with us, please, because this is quite a challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to this. Tap your foot, do what you want to do. Enjoy the visuals. This is the last slide, and I'll hand to Simon.
3, 2, 1.
let's get one more hand for Paul Lana on that track there. What a fantastic piece of work. Fantastic. All right, I trust you all enjoyed the first half of Now Sound 2.0. We're going to break for a little bit.